listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 101 of the DCAU Review. I am your host, Cal, and with me, my good brother, my good friend, and co-host, Liam. Liam, welcome to episode 101 of the DCAU Review.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. We've got a new show to talk about, but before we get to that, Cal, we actually, for the first time ever, have a guest with us. It's our special correspondent, James Strecker of the Watchtower Database YouTube channel. James, welcome to the show.
Hey. Unintentional, but it worked pretty well. That's my.
Yeah, leave that in.
That's how I say hello to everyone. Is I cough onto their face.
Awesome.
In times like this, it's the best way to greet people, I think.
Yes, we are in strange times these days. We'll talk about that when we get into plot. There's definitely some real world parallels as we go through our episode here today. But before we do that, let's talk about what we are covering this week, Liam. As we talked about last week, we're starting a brand new episode. We last week reviewed the final episode of the Justice League series. Obviously, we've not reviewed all episodes of the Justice League, but we did cover Starcrossed last week, which sort of opened the floodgates, so to speak, to allow us to continue.
Of my tear ducts.
Yes, it was a very emotional episode. But we're here now talking about Justice League Unlimited, guys.
Yes, absolutely. We are talking about the debut episode, Initiation. And I guess we can before we get into our main categories, as we always do, Cal, and since we have a special guest correspondent with us, James, start us off. Give us your thoughts on kind of the transition from Justice League to Justice League Unlimited, either what you remember at the time as this show was debuting or just sort of your general thoughts on it now. Was the transition jarring? Did you enjoy it? Were you excited to get to see more superheroes in this DCAU world?
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, there are multiple. I felt multiple things as a child watching it. I'm pretty sure. My brain might be melting thinking of this, but I'm pretty sure in the credits of Starcrossed, when it aired on Toonami, that was when they first announced, like, it's all coming back. Everybody, there's going to be so many friggin' superheroes. And I'm like, oh my god, what is this? What am I looking at? Like, I can't even. I'm still crying from Hawk Girl flying away. I'm emotions, everything.
Yeah.
What is happening? I'm 10 years old. Whatever. Not 10. How old was I? I was probably like 16. Let's pretend I wasn't crying. And so, yeah. So just a big bunch of stuff thrown at me at once that I wasn't expecting. At the time, I was a member of a message board called Super Buddies, where it was just a kind of talk back forum about all the episodes and what was going on and stuff. And nobody was really talking about what's next after Justice League. Everyone was this is the end of the show, I guess. And so there wasn't the internet as it is today of like, oh yeah, we knew months ago there was going to be a follow-up show, or we do, all these. Oh yeah, Ken Schreiner's going to be on it as Green Arrow. That would be so cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There was just a bunch of nothing, void of emptiness, knowledge. So the fact that oh, just kidding, it's 60 superheroes now was, I think, just overwhelmingly cool from the get-go. And then, yeah, we can talk about the episode as itself when we get to that part.
For sure. Now, James, for those if obviously I think if people are listening to our podcast, they have to have heard about you guys because you guys are much more famous and bigger,
Oh,
presence.
don't say this.
No.
You're not wrong. I'm just
social media. So, just in case somebody has been living under a rock, you run the Watchtower Database. Give just a brief synopsis about what that is and how much of Justice League Unlimited may have inspired that.
Well, real quick, I will go ahead and shout out Ted Kendrick and Maddie Washburn, who are my creative cohorts. It's always weird for me to try to describe our different roles on the channel, because we all kind of almost equally share like the workload when it comes to, you know, creating the videos and everything. I do the bulk of, or pretty much all of, I guess, the editing and all the kind of behind the scenes stuff. So I do, I guess, technically run the channel, but yeah, it's definitely a team effort for sure. What was the second half of the question? You distracted me.
Oh, sorry. No. Like, what role did Justice League Unlimited or just like the passion did that ultimately play in sort of establishing Watchtower Database and the, you know, inspiring the stuff that you guys do on the YouTube channel?
Well, it's actually, I think this show is pretty much the reason why Watchtower Database exists, because, you know, there were all the other DCAU shows that you have kindly reviewed and continue to review that, you know, are a part of this universe. The Justice League Unlimited show, I was making a website dedicated to, like, oh, here's every character and every episode and every ship and gadget and all this stuff in JLU specifically, and Justice League, that was called the Justice League Watchtower, and that was online actually for a couple of years, around like 2004, 2005, and then. And if anyone that might be thinking, there's a couple people that might be hearing this and thinking like, oh, I know Justice League Watchtower. You're probably thinking of the other Justice League Watchtower, which was another fan site that was up at the same time that I unintentionally stole the name of. It's a very easy mistake to make, I think.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Justice League, what's a thing that they use for information? But anyway, that was online for a bit, and then I took it down when the show ended, because it was kind of like, well, the DCAU is over. There's no point in continuing to pay for this with a 16-year-old's salary of nothing. So I just kind of like in the background worked on a much better looking and better made Justice League Unlimited fan site that Ted and I named the Watchtower Database. And I was all set to put that online around 2010, 2011. Here's literally everything. Every character has a picture. Everybody has, all their episodes they were in. Here's every piece of information you could want to know, pretty much. And then we just decided, for whatever reason, well, why just do Justice League and Justice League Unlimited? The DCAU is like over at that point. Let's just do it on the entire DCAU. It's like, oh, okay, I'll just go from like 400 characters to 1,400 characters. And,
easy.
No problem. Yeah. So then we've just been continuing to work on that since then for like a decade. And meanwhile, we started the Watchtower Database YouTube channel as a way to kind of like fill the time, and inform people about that and our comic legacies of the DCAU, and a handful of other things. So this show, I guess, is technically directly responsible for WDB existing, and I was gonna say I wouldn't have it any other way, but there are times when I would definitely.
When you're like trying to write a bio for like Scarface's third thug, you're like, God, I hate this. Why did I choose to do this?
No, it's Scarface's 10th thug is what.
Wait, he's the same character model that also appeared in Two-Face. Like, does that mean they're the same person?
There's a girl that was in the Justice League episode Fury. She's late for a doctor's appointment. She's stuck in her car, and the dude won't get out of the way. And he's like, "Keep your shirt on, lady. I'm on a break." And Wonder Woman lifts up his truck and throws him out of the way. That same girl is in Cadmus as a scientist in Flashpoint. And so I'm just like, what do I do with this information? Is this a character now? Does she have an arc?
Are they twins?
How did she get to this point?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty.
That's tremendous. All right. Well,
arc was really about this lady.
It all makes sense now. Somewhere Vic Sage is like, yes, this is what it's all been about. Scientist is the scientist. Right. Exactly. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. Definitely check it out. We're gonna have you plug some stuff at the end of the episode, James. But yeah, we are excited that you're here. So before we jump into our actual scores for this week's episode, as Liam said, it's called Initiation. It originally debuted on July the 31st. 2004. So that's right. We're running it back. It would be the 16th year anniversary coming up here in July. Liam, as you always do, you have the perfect IMDb synopsis for this week's episode. So please, if you don't mind, share that with James and myself.
Absolutely. And this is for the episode Initiation, which was written by Stan Berkowitz and directed by Joaquin Dos Santos. And that synopsis reads as such. The heroes ask a reluctant Green Arrow to join the newly expanded Justice League. Green Lantern takes a team including Green Arrow, Supergirl, and Captain Atom to stop a giant nuclear monster.
All right, James, thoughts on that IMDb synopsis?
I've actually been wanting to talk to you guys about this for a while. I'm glad I have the platform to do so.
Please do.
So I will say, I know that it's a little late to say this because you've been doing it this way for however many hundreds.
Episodes.
But IMDb is a fully editable like user submitted place.
Absolutely.
Like Wikipedia. And so I'm sure that these synopses are probably written by just some rando and not because but at the same time, most of the time, except for on occasion when they're just like one sentence nothingness, they're actually more descriptive of the episode than the official synopses are. But back in the day, you would get the Cartoon Network, press releases or whatever of like, here's the episodes coming up, and like Initiation, I'm looking at it right now. A reluctant Green Arrow joins forces with the new Justice League to stop a rampaging nuclear monster in Asia. Yep, correct. Like that's the entire synopsis. And
you would find that blurb in the TV guide. Like that's the TV guide blurb.
Yeah, exactly. Which I guess would make you want to watch Hits Question.
All right. Well, it's just an excuse to have Liam read some random person's description of the episode.
I'm not saying you're like wrong to do that. It's just kind of slightly bothered me that like I don't know what idiot came on. Okay, today I'm gonna write.
Like 1 week, someone's gonna trick me that listens to this, and they're gonna like put in the synopsis for like Critters when I'm reviewing a Batman Beyond episode or something. And I'm gonna look foolish.
I don't remember Green Lantern fighting giant cockroaches or giant hentai.
I don't remember that happening today, but that's what it says.
All right, so why don't we jump? I love it. Thank you. Like we need this third-party feedback, letting us know about each of the little like bits.
Yeah, I've got a whole list of what you're doing wrong, and I'm just
bring it on. We cannot wait. Constructive criticism is not our kryptonite. All right, so let's talk about the plot, guys. All right, so plot, as Liam so expertly delivered from IMDb's synopsis there, we basically have what amounts to be the introduction and focus on a brand new world here in the Justice League, expanding beyond the original 7, now who are the original 6, single tier for Shaira.
Pour one out.
Yep, pour one out for her. Fear not, she will return. Spoiler alert.
Return.
Yeah, spoiler alert. All right. So I guess we'll start off. We'll toss it to Liam and get his general thoughts here on the plot. Liam, it's a very Green Arrow heavy centric episode. It's very well bookended. I feel like he's very reluctant at the beginning. He doesn't want to get involved. He thinks he's the he's the small persons, and I don't mean people that are height challenged. He means the he means the metaphorical little guy superhero. So he's to stand up for the little guy, and shouldn't be out here fighting giant monsters. And of course, coincidentally, he ends up fighting a giant monster.
So it's interesting for a lot of reasons. One being that in this new Justice League Unlimited world, we no longer have every episode be a 2-parter. Mm-hmm. So we have to jam everything into this pilot episode here. We establish who the Green Arrow is in this opening scene where he's beating up some robbers who are robbing a grocery store, which is about as small scale as you could get compared to where we last left the Justice League.
And fighting a giant army.
Right. And then you immediately have him teleport to the Watchtower. He meets the giant Justice League. You get Superman giving the big speech to this giant roster of heroes. And then you have to immediately jump to this story in what I guess is basically the DCAU's version of North Korea.
Yeah, it seems that way.
And this giant nuclear monster that's rampaging, and the government doesn't want the Justice League involved, and so they're sort of dealing with politics. And then this sort of underlying thing of Green Arrow not wanting to be a team player, but then ultimately having to be the guy who kind of holds it all together as the superpowered types are kind of all outmatched when they try to go at it with more brute force tactics. And then ultimately he's able to save the day and joins the League at the end. So it's just a lot. It's a lot to shove in there all at once. And actually, I wanted to ask James this as part of you know so much about the DCAU timeline. How exactly much time do you know is supposed to have passed between when we saw Starcrossed, the end of Starcrossed, and this episode here?
Well, Maddie's gonna get mad at me when his blood pressure listening to this is already rising because I'm gonna mess it up. I am pretty sure that between Starcrossed and Initiation, there's only a few months. We have Starcrossed is around. Oh God, I don't want to say specifics. I just know it's not even a year. Like less than a year. Yeah, and it's kind
less
of
than a year from now, whenever now is.
Yeah, there you go. Sure. Less than a year. Wait, no. Less than a year from Starcrossed, whenever Starcrossed is, I think
exactly.
Is better.
Yeah, that works better.
Right. All right. So, yeah, it is a lot jam-packed into it. We were used to that sort of elongated story stretched out between two episodes. James, give your basic thoughts on plot here. What was your I'm sure you've seen this episode quite a lot, but on your most recent viewing here, what stood out for you as far as the plot was concerned?
Yeah, well, actually, knowing I was coming on to the podcast, and I was thinking about Initiation. Yeah, I've seen this a trillion times. I got it. But then I was just thinking I really don't come back to this episode on purpose. If I'm gonna watch a specific, if I'm just I'm bored. Time to I really have to be bored to purposely this sounds terrible, but to purposely watch any Justice League Unlimited episode because of how many times I've seen them. But
right.
This one specifically is it's not bad, but it's not one that I'm oh my goodness, hell yeah, I'm gonna watch Initiation.
Right.
The best thing to happen ever. There's the first oh gosh, it's probably only the first 5 or 6 minutes or something of the episode up through when they leave on the actual mission to Chiang Mai to stop the not Brimstone dude. There's all the introduction of Green Arrow is basically our POV. He's seeing the Watchtower and all these other characters and everything for basically the first time, and it's so marvelous and miraculous to him, and he doesn't really know what to think. Does he like this, or does he think this is too much? And that's what everyone else is thinking watching the episode. And because Maddie will tell you, he discontinued watching JLU partway through when it was airing because he was this is dumb. This is just a bunch of extra characters. They ran out of ideas or whatever, which he has since turned around on because he watched the whole thing and went oh wait, no, this is probably one of the best shows in the DCAU besides Zeta Project. But so
naturally, of course.
So, but yeah, that was my initial thoughts. Also, is that for the first several episodes of this show, actually, is kind of okay, so it's just, there's just going to be a bunch of superheroes fighting a big army, which is, everyone's complaint about the Marvel movies and stuff. There's just a bunch of robots or a bunch of aliens or whatever. Sometimes they're robot aliens, but there's not not a grounding, emotional story really or whatever for the first couple episodes. but I can see both sides of it with Initiation. I think it's struggling with what it wants to be, whether it wants to be this big bombastic introduction to there's 60 Justice League members and there's I'll look at all the new stuff. Oh my God. And then it's suddenly like, okay, put that in the back of your head. We're going to go to Asia and stop a big robot that's still going on up in space, but you don't get to see it for a while. And you're just meant to accept that this is the new status quo or whatever of the show. And that's okay. I just go back and forth on whether I think that that's exciting enough of a series premiere or not, I guess, because we just ended, like you were saying, with all the Starcross stuff, and we start off with Little Green Arrow don't know if he liked this or not. And is that cool or is that, boring? I don't know. But it's not, I'm still, what is the word?
Conflicted?
Yeah, those words on it, however many years after it premiered. And so I guess that just shows that the plot itself is fine. I think it may have been better as a two-parter just for this one episode, just to kind of get us into things. But we definitely learn more about the league and everything, all the new stuff as the season goes on. So it fixes itself eventually. It's just not one of my go-to this episode rocks kind of things.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. I think in viewing this, and this is the first time I've seen this episode in a while, and it's funny that you said that. It's it's not your go-to. When I sit down to rewatch Justice League Unlimited, this is not one of the episodes that I frequent. Okay. Just because I do think it is sort of overloaded, and the storyline is a little bit, I don't know, it's goofy. They don't even give a name to the villain. It's just, clearly inspired by Brimstone, but not giving the name Brimstone, so we don't even have a name for it. And I don't think until this watching of it, when I'm watching it with that more critical eye that we do when we're reviewing the episode rather than just sitting down to enjoy it, did I catch the whole parallels between, now Green Arrow understands why he is an important member of the team. Although we did comment that if it wasn't for his horniness, he probably wouldn't have said yes to the team.
That continues to keep him around for a while, actually.
Yeah. So, man, the Justice League sure are lucky that he's one horny dude.
And Batman, and
So I would say, just in general, I think that it gets a 6 out of 10 for me for plot. I think that it's decent. I think that there are certainly some issues. I did not love the Captain Atom character. I felt like that if you're going to start off, if you're introducing a new character, okay, Green Arrow is a human character, very much in the vein of Batman, and then you have Supergirl. Okay, so that's very much in the vein of Superman, and then your third person is Captain Atom, who is pretty much useless in this episode, despite being probably the most powerful being, if not one of those.
That's another thing, is that he just dies, but not really. There's no stakes there. I have no idea who this character is, and he explodes, and it's all. Oh my God, the terrible thing.
Right.
I don't. But who? I'm still learning who the other 59 people are. So I don't know.
It's funny you mentioned the Marvel movies, because it feels a lot to me like how in the first Avengers movie, they really try to make you care about the one S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that Loki kills. The dude who's on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. later on. I can't think of his name.
Yeah. Coulson. Now I feel more watching that because he's a more important character to the universe. But yeah, at the time was who are you? I don't remember.
Right.
Yeah.
He was a cameo in one of the Iron Mans and in Thor, and then now we're oh my God, he's dead. We have to become the Avengers.
Yeah, sorry, Maddie. I don't care about Coulson very much.
I'll go ahead and give my plot score here. I gave it a similar to Cal's, as we generally are very similarly in agreement. I gave it a 7 out of 10 because I do think in a vacuum, especially once we get on the ground, it's an interesting idea, and to have as you mentioned, James, the sort of little guy POV of this giant conflict between these superpowered beings and this giant monster, and just we're following the guy with the bow and arrow. Like, I do think that's interesting and compelling, but the reason it can't be higher is for all the reasons we've already talked about, which is just that it's also still supposed to be the pilot episode of this new series and this brand new jumping on point for new viewers as well as people that are following from Justice League. So I think it works kind of in a vacuum, but doesn't work great as like the linchpin episode that it kind of should be.
Mm-hmm. James, even though you are a special correspondent, you do get a scorecard this week. So your scorecard will not go into the official rankings, but you still get to play along at home. So it's like you're the one or two listeners that we have that play along with us. So let's hear your score for the plot this week.
I also chose 6 for.
All right.
And I chose that before you said it. So don't accuse me of anything.
We didn't discuss answers either. No.
Well, so you brought up you brought up how I brought up Green Arrow being the POV. Dude, there's a few episodes from now, The Greatest Story Never Told, which is Booster Gold's like, there's something going on. I won't talk about it too much, but there's a horrible thing going on that only he knows about, and meanwhile the rest of the Justice League is just like fighting a much like higher level threat that is we don't see enough of it happening, but we know like, okay, this is distracting them enough they can't pay attention. They think that this other thing that he's dealing with is not important. I think that kind of plot might have been a better way to introduce, there are so many superheroes, look at all of them go in the background kind of thing. What I think like this episode tries to do that in a way of like, he's in this world now, this is what the Justice League is, but then the plot just becomes about these like 4 people, and you forget about the rest of the stuff. And again, like, I'm not trying to tell the McDuffies and Deanies of the world you were wrong, you did a bad thing, this sucks.
Fair enough, and that's what we do on this episode. We always say we obviously love these episodes, these shows, so we're not just trashing them. That's why we don't trash them. We're just saying, hey, under a critical lens, maybe this would have been better, or hey, this could have been different. It's the same thing as anybody that critiques anything. So, all right, moving on. Let's talk about animation and visuals, fellas. James, let's talk about animation visuals. I'll throw it to you first. Anything stick out to you here that you appreciated? For me, I'll just make a quick comment and then throw it over to you. Mm-hmm. For me, that opening sequence with the introduction of the Green Arrow to me sticks out as just a really fun sequence. Some guys are robbing a convenience store, and he jumps in, and you immediately get the visual gags of trick arrows and some cool pan shots and him shooting arrows up and down aisles of a convenience store. But I think that opening sequence was a good way to kick off and introduce the Green Arrow character.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole episode is beautiful, really. The like, there's no point where that looks really bad, at least that I can remember. Mm-hmm. From start to finish, it's very consistent. There are some episodes where you can tell that by the end of the episode, whoever is, drawing everything is like, oh, I'm so tired of drawing Lex Luthor's face. Oh my God. And they just like kind of just rush to the end. But there's a consistent quality throughout this episode. Do you kind of count the like direction of the episode in this category?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, that's animation visuals. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so Joaquim Dos Santos, he's I saw his name, and his name looks so elegant and like regal and stuff that I always assumed he was just this much older, like 70-year-old man that's like, yes, I've studied with the best or something. He was like, you look at the behind the scenes stuff, he's just like a 30-year-old like surfer dude. he's just a regular guy. I don't know, but he started off as like a storyboard guy on Justice League, and they must have liked what he did enough to give him. He directed like half of this show, if not more. And that was something that was like right off the bat way different from Justice League. And Justice League went back and forth with Dan Reba or Butch Lucic. I don't know how you say it, but and I could always tell if I was watching an episode, I barely ever paid attention to the credits as they were happening at the start. But I would like, I like this episode. It's probably directed by Dan Reba. I don't like this episode. It's probably directed by Butch Lukic. And I don't know why that is, but if I go and look at all, the episodes that I thought were boring or like slow paced or just not, you probably can more blame the writer or something. I don't really know, but it happens either coincidentally or whatever. Joaquin Dos Santos is pretty consistent with like he's really good at directing the action. He does like the shaky cam during the action stuff. Everything's kind of bumping around. That was a cool aesthetic difference with this show compared to Justice League. It kind of automatically like it fits with the rock and roll kind of thing, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And so yeah, I mean, I don't really have any qualms with this episode's animation. They had a big task in front of them to like introduce you to all this stuff and get it right. The only thing that I know that they got wrong is that Stripe is in the lineup twice in the one shot. But other than that, everyone's pretty on model.
We were talking, and you guys have a video, I believe. I remember specifically seeing this because you guys go through and point out each and every character in there.
Yep.
The big green guy is assumed to be Swamp Thing, we think, but he's only seen from behind.
Yeah, there's the overhead shot of Superman talking to everybody right after the opening credits, and there's a handful of people in that shot that are not ever seen again. And I'm pretty sure Bruce Timm has mentioned that he purposely snuck Swamp Thing in there just to mess with people. But there's just a bunch of other stuff in there, like some guy with wings and like I don't know, Catwoman looking person, like. Who? What is this?
Right.
And they never come back. So you just deal with it. But yeah.
Right. I like to think that they just they hated Superman's speech so much that they left during the opening credits.
Nah,
like this guy sucks. He's a terrible public speaker. Superman.
Do I do a score right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
You can, yeah, sure.
I'm gonna give it an 8. The only reason I give it 8 instead of a higher, I would give it a 10, except for that I'm trying to look up who the animation studio was for this episode. DR Movie Co. That's I can't remember what else. I want to say they did Secret Society. Doesn't look like it actually, but anyway. They have a tendency to kind of stretch the already exaggerated features of these characters in a way that's like, I don't know if I like it. Like there are some points where, someone will, like Supergirl will be, flying through the air and her arms are like just a little longer than they should be. And that's really nitpicky. Like this is coming from someone who... Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm apologizing.
Yeah. He's like, I have to be impartial. It's like we're not crapping on it. We're just saying, hey, I think this looks a little bad.
Okay. Reviewing the episode. I got it. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. As I'm constantly, studying every little line of these characters, and so when something seems a little off to me, it's kind of like, oh, why? Why didn't you just not do that? Why didn't you try harder for that one frame or whatever? But that's my only thing that I slightly dislike, I guess, is that characters are a little malleable when this animation company does it.
Yeah, I noticed that a little bit I feel like facially Supergirl's face looked a little odd, like a little squishy. I don't know, that's a weird word for it, but
her lips are weird. Yeah, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, almost like she walked out of it's like they melded her with somebody from the Teen Titans show or something.
Yeah, sure.
It's a weird extra I I don't know, movement to it or something, or the way it's drawn is just a little off to me. But I definitely noticed that a little bit too. And yeah, I mean, to your point, James, about the direction, there's some really, really tremendous shots. There's kind of a one long tracking shot where Green Arrow pulls back to fire one of the rods into the hole in the robot's chest.
His reactor, Liam.
Yes, his reactor.
His reactor.
It's a family show.
It's called the rod hole. It's canon.
But and it's kind of this trying to get this back on track. It's just this one long kind of tracking shot where you follow him as he's looking up at it, and the camera kind of pans up to show this giant nuclear behemoth as he's about to fire the arrow. There's some really, really cool shots. The final shot as he's about to throw or shoot the arrow that actually does turn the machine off, as he's sort of standing up on this little cliff with the moon behind him is and there's all the smoke and fire around him is really, really well done. And
dirtbag.
Yeah, it's very, to your point, very action movie, very definitely a different sort of framing to a lot of the action in these scenes. So for all those reasons, like I said, there's definitely some minor things I didn't like, but overall I thought it was a really strong episode. So I actually gave visuals a 9 out of 10.
Ooh, 9 out of 10. Love it. Well, I also gave visuals a 9 out of 10.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're 2 for 2. We're 2 for 2 with having identical scores with at least 2 of our scorecards today. But the only reason the only reason I didn't give it a 10, and James, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, because personally, I have an issue when they switch to doing some of the CGI animated vehicles, which is, to me, I talked about it last week during the Star-Crossed episode. It's bad a lot of times in the Star-Crossed episode. It seems like the frames almost skip, so it just looks very unnatural. And to me, that it looks a little better in this episode, but it still feels very, very jarring, and like I'm watching, the 90s Spider-Man cartoon or something, when it's juxtaposed against the standard digital animation.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. They were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should with the CGI. It's always that to me in these kind of shows where they're never ready to put CGI stuff in the show, budget wise, and they're just do it anyway. It's noticeably, I don't know, I wouldn't say bad, I guess, because it's in a weird cartoon superhero world. It's basically an anime. There's no rule that says don't do that, but it's jarring. Yeah, I agree. The watchtower looks great because it just sits and floats there. It doesn't have to do anything. But it's down to stuff like the Earth is now CGI, not in Justice League it was always a painting.
Right. Why do we have to keep adding more computer? Stop dicking around with stuff.
Well, it's weird because they choose to go somewhere between photorealistic and cartoon with these things, where I feel if they're going to put it in a cartoon, they should just go for the cell shaded, outlined look that you would see in I don't know. There's a bunch of anime that does this now, where either the entire show or big monsters or something will just be CGI that they've put a filter on that looks like a cartoon now. And that's also very annoying looking, but it's not as offensive. I'm second guessing what I'm saying here. I think it is more offensive to do it that way, actually. So maybe I don't know. It's stuff like it's time saving, I'm sure, especially in this show where they have to draw so many characters. But it does stick out as a weirdly juxtaposed thing. It's not as bad when it's the javelins or whatever, but when it's something I don't know, just a car, or they did in the what episode? What's the Patriot Act? Final season, they're fighting the general in the streets, and half the shots are just a weird CGI city so that they can rotate the camera in different directions. And when it happens, it's what is happening? What am I looking at? Why? Like it looks like 90s Spider-Man City.
Yeah.
Like it just looks bad, and I don't know.
It sticks out, and that's, I mean, probably behind the scenes, there's definitely reasons, like you said, why they did this. I feel it just sticks out like a sore thumb, and I don't think it will age very well. That's to me, that's the beauty
it hasn't.
Those original Batman the Animated Series episodes, and we always draw back to comparing to those because those are the original standard by what we go off of. But even the Superman cartoons, like those did not have computer generated animation, and they hold up because everything looks exactly the same. And now you're introducing this sort of CGI stuff into it, and now like I said, it looks like a PlayStation 2 game, maybe, like
right.
if that good. So it would have gotten a perfect score for me just from some of the other things. I think the explosions and the visualization of the not Brimstone characters sort of nuclear power coming out looked awesome.
Yeah.
Very anime.
Brimsnow. I don't know.
I love it. Brimsnow. But yeah, strong score from us, from all three of us on visual animation. All right, let's move on to music here. I'm going to throw it to Liam first. Liam, we'll talk about some music here. Brand new series. We can't go on without talking about the brand new hyper rock and roll Justice League Unlimited theme song that is included along with the brand new intro to the show as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that theme song, just so we have it written here, is written by Michael McQuistion. And it really sets the tone that this is in the same way that, and I'm going to compare it to Batman Beyond soundtrack a lot, probably because that's the other DCAU show with electric guitars. But it's that same sort of thing where, like with the Batman Beyond theme song, when that theme song kicks in and it's so completely different than what we were used to with Superman and Batman, you kind of feel that same way going from Justice League to Justice League Unlimited, where you think of some of the grand like orchestral themes like in A Savage Time or something like that, and then you juxtapose this with like this super fast-paced, hard drumming, screeching electric guitar, hell yeah, like 80s power ballad stuff. Like it's really striking, and it really does, to me, as far as when we've talked about this in plot and a little bit in animation, of trying to set a tone for this is the first episode of the new series, the new status quo is here. This, to me, the music does the best job of anything of establishing like this is new, this is fresh, this is different than what we were doing before. We're in a whole new ballpark now, and I think the music does a great job at that.
For sure. James, thoughts on music?
Yes, I agree with whichever one of you just talked. I can't see you, so it's hard to remember. Okay. The intro is like, it starts off orchestral, and you're like, all right, it's Justice League again, and then like, oh my goodness, no, it's not. It's different now, and it goes right hand in hand with the show, and I think that like, I guess it makes sense for them to have done this as a, okay, we're getting closer to Batman Beyond, so we're eking into, like, it's a mix of Batman Beyond style music and Justice League style music. But really, it's like I said, it's less than a year after Justice League. There's still like 30 more years until Batman Beyond. Like, why do this now or whatever? What if they made another show after this that was even further toward Batman Beyond? And they're like, well, now what do we do? Just slightly less strings and brass. I don't know. But yeah, it's really cool. I'm a trombone player, so I'm like keen on this kind of thing, I guess. But the atmosphere of the show definitely changed to accompany. Yeah, like you said, hell yeah is a pretty good description of of just the change in tone, the change, like, if the show had continued to have the same someone is slamming on the bottom half of the piano sound that Justice League did. I don't know if it would have made as much sense, if it would have gone as well with the tone of the show and everything. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade it, but I would be interested to hear if a version of the soundtrack that is more aligned with what Justice League sounded like, and to know if the feeling of the show would change enough, or if it would be basically the same show. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's a fair point. I think that for me, the musical point that stood out for me, I loved. I can tell you that when I first heard the intro, I thought it was bad. It reminded me of music from the Super Nintendo Ken Griffey Jr. game of the 1990s. If you go pull up the YouTube clip of that theme song, it's like the guitar is exactly the same. So I did not like it. It definitely grew on me. I appreciate it now. If I had to rank the themes, man, I think this would be, not including Zeta Project, I think that this would probably be maybe my my least favorite of the themes.
Lower than Static Shock season 1 theme?
Gotta get up, gotta go.
No, not worse than no. When they brought in Little Romeo to do the second season, like that was my jam. Like that goes above this, but maybe not the first season. It's probably neck and neck with the first season of Static.
Okay.
With that said, it's a fine piece of music.
Yeah.
And I think that the highlight really for this episode though is the Green Arrow theme itself.
But it'll make me a little cranky.
Yeah, definitely. That's we always talk about that with villains as well as heroes on this show. Is the things that we really gravitate to as hosts is always the refrain, the theme song that we come back to, the Batman theme, the Superman theme, the Wonder Woman theme, and obviously, so starting out with this bit of music that kind of plays throughout the episode every time Green Arrow does something really cool it's good. And again, it's sort of as James said, sort of melding the style of music, the style of composing music from Justice League or some of the earlier shows with this electric guitar theme. So getting this brand new Green Arrow theme that kind of plays throughout the entire episode, but kind of rocked up a little bit more each time we hear it, and played in different keys, played a little bit more triumphantly and defiantly when he's holding that bow at the end and he's about to shoot the rod into the hole.
Reactor.
It really works, and I think that Green Arrow theme is definitely the standout piece as far as a single piece of music in this episode goes. For all those reasons that we've talked about here, and for the great tone is set, I actually gave music a 10 out of 10 for this episode.
Wow. James, score?
I'm gonna give it a 7. I think it's strong, but I think that either the composers or like Bruce Timm and co were a little too in love with this style of music. Like they'll continue to use the Justice League Unlimited theme, throughout the show, or in the Fatal 5 movie and stuff like that. Whenever something cool happens, and it's like, okay, but what happened to the Justice League theme? Like they almost never use that, and I would like that to be used more in stuff. But if we're talking about this specific episode, then it's very it's strong to introduce you to the world, and it is inoffensive. But I didn't love
That's one of my favorite ones. One of my favorite terms. This music was inoffensive.
Yeah.
Not a saying it's bad. It's just inoffensive.
It did not trigger me. So.
That's right. There you go. I'm going to split the difference between the two of you. Well, sort of split the difference between, and I went with an 8 out of 10 for music. All right, guys. Final category here. We are going to talk about our voice actors, and we're gonna have Liam, as he always does, run down through here. James, feel free to chime in if you feel like there's a particular actor that you felt did an excellent job performance-wise here. But I'll have Liam run down. Liam, we have a new cast. Well, with the addition of 60 plus members or whatever it is of the Justice League, we're bound to run into a new voice here or there. But we have a couple of our standards here. We get some Kevin Conroy. Certainly, and we get some George Newbern, but we have a pretty large focus on the newbies. Not to mention, of course, Phil Lamar also.
Yeah, Phil Lamar is kind of he's our original leaguer, who's kind of along for the ride. Although, as we've mentioned, that Green Arrow and some of the other newer characters are kind of focused on a lot more. But yeah, we have, as far as the original cast, we have, as you mentioned, Cal, we have Kevin Conroy as Batman, Phil LaMarr as Green Lantern, Carl Lumbly as the Martian Manhunter, and George Newbern as Superman. Flash and Wonder Woman are there as well, but they don't get to talk.
Nope, we don't want to hear from them.
No, who would? But just kidding.
Hey, now.
That's a joke. Just a joke.
You know Susan Eisenberg listens to every episode of the DCAU review.
She has retweeted us, and I literally almost peed my pants the first time. I don't think I've ever told the story on the pod, but like getting to interact with actual people who worked on these shows is never not incredible to me.
Yep.
So, yeah, we love Susan. But yeah, as far as this episode goes, we have Nicole Tom as Supergirl, who is the returning voice actress from Superman the Animated Series. She's kind of a little different. Cal and I talked about this a little bit before we recorded. I guess there's a little bit of this. We obviously only had a few appearances by her in Superman, but she's a little bit more of a like rebellious hip teenager in this one who wants to, run in and fists first to deal with all the problems. And Green Lantern has the college dean shaking his fists at her. You kids slow down. And then you have Nicole Tom there. You have George Eads as Captain Atom, who as you guys kind of talked about in plot, he's really just kind of there. Like, we don't know him. We've never met him before. I mean, you can forgive that a little bit more with characters like Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern.
Well, there is some exposition, too, where they give some wonderful exposition where he gets to explain that he's just, what does he say, mass and matter or something?
He's no longer flesh and blood. He's just pure energy now. And he lives inside this containment suit. And so, yeah, but he's just kind of along for the ride. He tries to absorb the energy and can't. And so
I was not a fan of his performance. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's just,
they replace him after this episode. It's like
Chris really?
Cox or something, I think is the name of the guy. Yeah, it's never him again.
Okay. Then we don't have to be nice.
Yeah.
He was not very good. I did not really care for him as Captain Atom in this episode. And I don't know. You almost wish it could have been somebody else who was either more like a more visually interesting character, or maybe one of the other characters that we already knew from the previous iterations of the DCAU. Would have been cool, but either way. And then of course we have Ken Schreiner playing Green Arrow, who folks would probably know best from his near 30-year run on General Hospital. Just a veteran actor of various soap operas and television. And he is a pretty great Green Arrow for the sort of classic archetypal Green Arrow in the comics. It's one of those things where for me, when I read a comic book, if Green Arrow shows up, I kind of hear Ken Schreiner's voice in my head.
Concur. Totally agree with you on that. He's very, very good. I think that his performance here is a great way to introduce this character to the DCAU, and I think that he obviously plays a larger part going forward. But yeah, I think this was another perfect casting by Andrea Romano.
Agreed. And yeah, I'll go ahead and give my score here, and then we can get James's. I gave voice acting a 7 out of 10. I think it's a good, strong start for the most part, but I didn't think, other than Ken Schreiner, I didn't think anybody else was great, mind-blowingly great in the episode, and in some cases they weren't very good at all. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely good, but not great. James, what are your thoughts on the voice acting of this episode?
Okay, so I also give it a 7 overall. Right. I don't again, with the music, there's nothing offensive about anybody's performance. There's nothing there's no character in this that I think is ooh, that was really miscast. That almost never happens because of Andrea Romano. But there are moments when it's better or worse. A particular moment that sticks out is actually from Phil LaMarr after he gets injured. And he's lying in the little hospital bed kind of thing in the javelin, and he bolts awake in the middle of someone else's sentence. And he goes, "Shahira," but he says it so Like you can't understand what like I had to watch it like 40 times before I understood he was saying Shayera and not just like I think I used to watch these shows with subtitles when I was a kid, half because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, and half because I was always watching them past my bedtime when I wasn't supposed to. And so like I'm pretty sure the subtitle dude on Cartoon Network, whoever was writing the subtitles, also did not know what the hell he was saying there and just put like like inaudible gasp or something like that, just some weird thing. But like that was during it's airing on TV that I've recorded to VHS that I'm rewatching enough times where the tape is deteriorating. So it's like I'm not helping myself out hearing that, but that's just one little moment. I agree that Supergirl's characterization is interesting. Like Nicole Tom gets to do a little more than what just like the character, kind of break loose from the restraints that Superman has had over her for the last few years. She's not allowed to leave the farm. She's not allowed to do this and this and this. And then suddenly nepotism gets her into the Justice League and she's just allowed to like do whatever the hell, she's supposed to listen to Green Lantern and the senior people, but she is, she can let loose a little bit. So that was cool. And then, I did want to mention James C., I think is how you would say it, is General Kwan. He does Jackie Chan Adventures, Jackie Chan voice.
Good.
And so that was kind of a cool, might as well actually. Yeah, it was running at the same time, I think. And so, just kind of a cool little crossover there, I guess. Cool. Yeah. With the stuff you're talking about with Ken Shriner being like who you hear as Green Arrow, most DC characters, if not all DC characters, I was introduced to through these shows. So that's pretty much true for anybody, even down to like a Captain Atom or a who's someone else that says like one thing, Aztec, stuff like that. Where like if you see him in a comic and they say something, my brain's gonna go to the only time they've ever heard them speak, or at least the first time it's heard them speak. So that's the same for me. I don't have much else to add with the specific like actors, but I did want to say that I think Phil LaMarr by this point has really kind of settled into who Green Lantern is as a person. Sure. You can definitely hear differences from this. He's gone through a ton of stuff, especially just recently in Starcrossed at this point. And at the start of the Justice League show, Phil LaMarr, he doesn't change the voice itself too much, but he definitely this is a case of the writers also learning who the character is through the show, but he's very, Wonder Woman shows up and he's like, lady, this is no job for amateurs and stuff like that. And he still has a little bit of that with Supergirl, where Jean is like, take Supergirl, and he looks at him like, are you kidding me? I'm sorry, I don't know if you can swear on this, but
we'll bleep it out. Don't worry.
Okay. And like, so he's still, he's like, hey, this like teenager, I don't want this. But he's willing, he's at this point, he's willing to lead a team of people who have never worked together before and who are brand new to this. Captain Atom has got his whole like best of the best of the best, sir, with honors thing going on. Like he's seeing this all as just another military operation, and they're all just like, you can kind of calm down with that. You don't have to do that. We're just people with superpowers. Right. But so I enjoy that Phil LaMarr's, he's settled into Green Lantern's personality a lot more, I think, by this point. So I think this is a very good Green Lantern episode for that reason.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I gave my score yet. I think I'm actually exactly the same as you guys. See, it doesn't matter who we have on the show here. Our scores will always be very similar.
That's right.
So I also gave it a 7 out of 10 for voice acting. Yeah, I think my only problem was with Captain Atom. It's bad. I just didn't like his characterization of the character. It feels very like he's just reading his lines, and I think they were going for like that military type who's just not showing any emotion. Like I
I kind of get that, but
it very well could have been like a guest star they brought on, like, oh, he's on CSI, let's get the CSI guy, and then he's, oh, whoops, not doing that again.
Crap, this guy,
yeah.
right? This guy isn't. Yeah, thank you. We'll call you. If we
yeah, I guess he'll never be in the show again. I don't know.
Exactly. All right. So with that, we will tally up our final scores here, unless you have a bonus point, James.
No, I do not.
Okay. Good. Perfect. Less for me to edit.
No sound effects. Sorry.
No sound effects to pipe in. Great. So totaling up my scores, I come down to a very respectable 30 out of 40 for this week's episode. Liam?
Yeah, I have a little bit higher than that. I have a final score of 33 out of 40.
All right. James, you able to do some quick math?
Yeah, I did it already, but the funny part was that I did, 6 plus 8 plus 7 plus 7. All right, now I got to find the average, divide that by 4. Oh, it's 4. Oh, it's 7. Like, what is happening? 7 out of 40? No, it's 28.
28. Perfect. All right. So one of the things we like to talk about, James, once we review the episode is talk about rewatchability. We sort of touched on that at the beginning. This isn't one that you necessarily is a go-to for you. But would you recommend it if somebody's going through this? Is this a must-watch, or is this to me, it feels like a must-watch because it is the very first episode of the series. It would, when you look at On Leather Wings, is On Leather Wings pivotal to the entire story of Batman? No, but it's the first episode of the series, so people should watch it. What are your thoughts on recommending? Is this a skip it or a go ahead and see it?
No, I generally like to say that you should always watch the series or season premieres and finales as part of a watch, no matter what's going on, just because they're always intended to be the thing that you watch first or last. And yeah, this episode definitely does a good and a fine enough job of setting up the new Justice League world, what you're going to expect, the status quo, that sort of thing for the rest of the series. And I think without it, you'd be even more confused of, at least, you get the Superman speech to everybody, or can't be cowboys anymore, or cowgirls, yuck, 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 right. And that whole thing. And so
Something leaves. He's like, that's a terrible joke. I'm out.
Yeah, that's when Catwoman says, no, thank you. And please teleport me back home. Batman dragged me here. I don't know why he thought I would like this.
That's great. All right, Liam.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with both of you. I think it's good. It gives you, if nothing else, Green Arrow is a pretty important character to these first 26 episodes of Justice League Unlimited. He's kind of a supporting cast and a leading man in a few episodes as well. Once you get into his relationship with the Black Canary and things like that. So yeah, I think it's good if for no other reason than, as James said, you get the little Superman speech at the beginning explaining kind of the new mission statement of this giant Justice League, and then you get to spend some time with sort of one of the more important characters of the whole series. So yeah, I would give this a thumbs up for rewatchability.
Awesome. All right. Well, that will bring us to the end of our episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Before we go, I'll let James give his opportunity for his plugs. James, what you guys got going on over at Watchtower Database?
Sure. You can find the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Watchtower Database. That's the only thing that's actually /Watchtower Database. Everything else is /DCAU Watchtower. I think that was because I tried to do either Instagram or Twitter as Watchtower Database, and it was already taken at the time. And I was like, well, okay. So that's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are DCAU Watchtower. Patreon is DCAU Watchtower. I'm going to throw that in there because you should give us your money because we're good people. Sure. And as of this moment, we're doing a casting call episode on Mark Hamill, which is it's a little show we do like once a year. That's like a voice actor spotlight kind of thing. What have they done besides what you know them from in the DCAU? The week after that's our Patreon winner, which was a Legion of Superheroes members. We talked about the Justice League members video in this podcast. and this one is counting all the Legion of Superheroes members. After that, I don't actually know what we're doing yet. We have some videos lined up for the summer that we know we're doing, but this whole stay-at-home shebang is making it a little hard for us to get together to film some of the stuff that we need to continue our story that we have going on in the videos. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, tune in to our YouTube channel, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for having me on Le Podcast.
Absolutely.
I could talk about this show for the next 6 hours, but I won't.
We really want to get into the deep and like the nitty gritty of each scene. We're going to break it down. We're going to go through the color palette.
I was going to say, yeah, like, okay, so frame 45 of the show here, we got Green Arrow's boxing glove arrow. When it pops out, it kind of does a little boring motion.
Right.
Like, you like that or not? But yeah.
Yeah, tune into the to our YouTube channel when we launch it in the future, and we'll do that. We'll have a breakdown of frame by frame what we're seeing. But no, seriously, James, thanks for coming on. We love what you guys do. We frequently name check you guys during the podcast because of the research that you guys have done and the content that you guys are putting out there. These are Liam and I cannot recommend enough the support to give you guys. You guys put out quality content. You're good people. And we love what you do. Our jobs are easier because of what you do.
Thank you. Yeah. And I would say there's definitely people that came before us that have laid the pathway for us to be as successful as we are with this stuff. Also, various other fan sites and stuff that have done a lot of the research for like our groundwork, I guess. But from there, yeah, we've pulled this whole thing apart more than it should ever have been, and I think I enjoy it. I'm sure that Maddie and Ted would be welcoming to the idea of coming on the show as well, and I look forward to potentially more of this. But it's up to you.
We'll call us. We'll call you.
It's not. We're leaning towards a Captain Adams situation right now.
Yeah.
Somebody and just call them James.
Next episode.
Next time, James Strecker will be voiced not by George Eads.
Love it. No, we had a blast, James. Thanks for coming on. We will definitely have you on in the future, and we definitely looking forward to have Maddie and Ted on as well. So thanks for coming on. But Liam, before we go, we're going to give a preview for next week's episode. What episode will we be covering for next week's episode?
Yeah, we're going to stay in these early episodes of Justice League Unlimited for the rest of the month of April here. And so we are going actually with the very next episode in the series. And that is For the Man Who Has Everything.
Love it. We go from the wide world of 60 superheroes back down to the DC Trinity.
Yes, sir.
Gotta love it. Alrighty. Well, until next time, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
I'm James.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Adios.
Well, I won't.